Thanks. Trial attorney and legal analyst Brian Claypool is now with us. Are you good at juggling? I would imagine you are.
Hey, Marty, great to see you again. Hey, I run a law firm, so I'm a good circus act. Trust me,
Oh my
juggling.
gosh. Wow. I mean, it is really hard to keep track, as you're sitting at home. My husband and I last night, he goes, now, wait, which one is it tomorrow? And I go, oh, there's actually two cases that we're following. Let's start with the immunity case. What precedent is there for presidential immunity?
Yeah, hey, Marty. Yeah, President Trump has an uphill battle here because usually the Supreme Court has what's called a precedent to rely on. In other words, either another case that's been interpreted by the Supreme Court, or, for example, a federal statute to interpret, right, to determine whether there is presidential immunity. Here, you have neither. There's never been a prior case ever decided by the U.S. Supreme Court with a sitting or former president being charged with a crime, and there's no current existing federal statute that talks about full criminal immunity. Why is that important? Because, man, the U.S. Supreme Court then would have to basically create a new law here, and I just really don't see that happening.
Right. And also, will one of the factors be deciding the threshold for immunity? So immune from this, but not from this. How will they determine something like that?
Well, I mean, look, President Trump is basically arguing that any sitting or former president can't be subjected to a criminal charge and a criminal trial because it's going to derail his or her ability to be the president. They're going to be subjected to political attacks when they get out of office with these criminal cases. That's the biggest argument they're really making. And then, look, Jack Smith and the special prosecutor, he's basically arguing that nobody is above the law, right? Really, that's the most powerful argument here. It doesn't matter if you're a sitting president, a former president. If you commit a crime, then you've got to sit and face the charges. But what's interesting here, Marnie, is the U.S. Supreme Court could potentially punt. And what I mean by that is they might actually say here, hey, what was the alleged conduct by former President Trump an official act, right? Because that's really the threshold here. It's got to be an official act by the former president. And maybe the Supreme Court says, hey, I'm going to send this back to the U.S. District Court at the trial court level to make an initial determination as to whether this conduct even constitutes an official act. If that happens, that will certainly delay this trial well beyond the November election.
That's interesting. Thanks for pointing that out. The other thing is we know the makeup of the court. Some have pointed that there may be a conflict of interest for some of the justices. So 3 of them were appointed by Trump. Do they have an obligation to remove themselves, or how does that factor in as they hear these oral arguments?
Yeah, Marnie, that's a weak argument. I mean, look, these are U.S. Supreme Court justices. I mean, they take an oath of honor and integrity. Remember, they're subjected to intense Senate judicial hearings, for days at a time, asking about their background, what are their beliefs, and if they are approved as a U.S. Supreme Court justice, we as a country should really trust that they're gonna handle these cases fairly and not allow politics to be injected. And remember, if you're going to make that argument, then the argument that Trump's making in the hush money trial should apply, which is, hey, 95% of the jury is Democratic, right? That doesn't fly either, because you don't get to pick where your trial takes place, and you can't kick people off a jury just because of their political beliefs.
Right. And to that point, you've got some conservative-leaning justices. You have some left-leaning justices as well. So the argument could be made on either side. The gag order is the first order of business on this New York hush money trial. Let's begin there as we get ready for that case to get underway again this morning. Is it justified, the gag order? Does Trump have an argument here that he's the only one being silenced?
Yeah, Marty, this is a tough call because I've been involved in high-profile criminal trials, a case involving Dalia DiPolito in South Palm Beach, Florida. And there was a partial gag order issued in that case because I was making comments in the media. But the significance of a gag order, especially in my case and this case as well, is to not poison or contaminate a potential jury pool. That's really the thrust and genesis of a gag order. Why is that important? Because you already have a jury picked here, right? The case is already in trial. Jurors are told you're not supposed to go home I'm sorry to say this, Marty. You're not supposed to go home and watch News Nation. You're not supposed to go home and watch other networks. You can't talk to anybody about this case. So comments that President Trump is making really, in my opinion, aren't going to have any real effect on the outcome of the case because you've got a jury seated. They're not supposed to be listening. And what really is the point of it? That said, though, I do think former President Trump is going a little bit too far. You can't go out in public and have millions of people watch you castigating a judge, for example. Like that's really crossing the line. You cannot attack a sitting judge on a case.
And what do you make, Brian, of the fact that the judge said to the defense team that you're losing all credibility with the court? Is this laying a pretty shifty foundation for the defense's argument and case moving forward so early?
Yeah, that's a powerful comment because I've done a lot of jury trials, and just so your viewers know, judges hardly ever make comments like that. Why? Because they don't want to be perceived as being biased in favor of one party or the other. So for this judge to make that comment means that he is fed up with the annex, and it's going to result in potentially more fines. I think the judge is likely to determine that there is a violation of the gag order. But that said, how's that going to affect the trial? Not much, because the jury's not hearing this. So the jury's not going to be tainted by these rulings on the gag order. The jurors oftentimes are set in a separate room so the judges can rule on it. So I don't really see this affecting really the outcome of the trial. It's more about whether Trump is going to be able to continue to do this. Quite frankly, you can find him till kingdom come. He'll probably get out there and still do it. The judge can't toss him in jail. That's going to delay the trial. Nobody really wants to see a former president in jail. So in some respects, Marnie, the trial judge is kind of handcuffed if you think about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no win here, right? I mean, Trump probably would like to be put behind bars. I mean, right? He gets more attention from his followers, more support when things like that happen. And yeah, the fines are minimal, so that does nothing to deter. It's quite a day to watch. Brian, thanks for breaking it down for us, as always.
Thanks for having me, Marnie.